This podcast was produced by OAR FM Dunedin with support from New Zealand On Air.
In this episode of Rewilding in Action, you'll find out from my guest what it's like to combine rewilding native forest with farming, the impact of cutting back Muehlenbeckia australis on the native forest, and why we might want to keep some of those non-native weeds until the native forest gets established. This episode of Rewilding in Action is sponsored by the Opera, Otago Peninsula Eco-Restoration Alliance, a private eco-reserve dedicated to conservation, rehabilitation, restoration and education. You can find out more about their tours on their website, theopera.co.nz. Kia ora, welcome to Rewilding in Action with me, your host, Maureen Howard. In this episode, I'm on Otago Peninsula again to meet with Paula Cross, who along with her husband Brendan farm 200 hectares they own and 680 hectares they lease on Otago Peninsula, and which includes caring for 3 pieces of naturally regenerating native forest. As we traverse one of the pieces of covenanted bush, I ask Paula what she and Brendan are growing on their farm.
So we are sheep and beef, predominantly sheep. We have 1,000 or so on our own property, and then we lease and have sort of around 4,500 sheep. And then we have some cattle just to tidy up paddocks basically, so 60 head of cattle. The bush that we're in today, Seaton's bush, was our first bush that we decided to covenant, and it was an easy choice because it's a beautiful bit of bush that you can walk around and enjoy.
It's been in the family, this bit of land, in your husband's family, is that right?
Yes, it's been in the family for his 6th generation. Our children are 7th generation, so it's been within his family since early immigration times. So this bit of bush we're in was remnant bush that was here right from the get-go. As we move further in, you'll see some extremely tall kānuka, kōwhais, ribbonwoods and fuchsias that are very old remnant trees. So it was grazed up until about 15 years ago. Never had cattle in this particular paddock for various other reasons, so it was only ever really grazed by sheep. So it was still not too bad as far as the state of the bush. But once we fenced it off from the stock, it really did enhance and had a lot more understory and growth and protection. It's about 4 hectares.
Right, okay, so it's quite a good size. And then you've got 2 others. What are they?
They're a similar size. I think one's a bit smaller at about 3.5, and the newest one that we've just done is slightly bigger at about 5.5 hectares. So what would you say the orientation is here? If you're talking about sort of topography, this particular part of the farm and this particular bush is more rolling. It's not particularly steep, and this is why this bush is easy to have tracks through it and to enjoy it. It is quite sheltered. It isn't really... The sun would come and probably hit the bush as it moves around later in the day, but it is in a bit of a gully, I guess, so it's hard to say what really it's facing with having quite a few hills around it. But the other 2 blocks that we have protected with the QE2 covenant, they're actually more south-facing and very, very steep. And that's what's happened, I believe, across a number of New Zealand farms where the clearing of the bush sort of did stop in these areas because it was pretty steep. So those ones you can't enjoy quite so much because getting around them is... you can, but it's clambering and harder to move around them. So... yeah, this one we've actually tried to create some access for the community as well because it's quite near to the Portobello Township village. So we haven't advertised it widely, but we tell all our friends and community members that they can enjoy this bush and come and use it and walk around it, and which they do. So yeah, we may come across someone in here. If we suddenly do, you'll know why.
Oh, that's wonderful. That's really great. So mostly I'm seeing some big kānuka. And what else have we got growing up in here?
There is a bit of a list. The kānuka for sure. These ones that we're seeing quite predominant is the mahaui, which is the whitey wood. Lots of different types of pittosporum. You can see some of those here around you as well. Coprosma type ones as well. There is, over there is lots of beautiful big fuchsias. in sort of in near the sort of glade area that we can go into. There is the huge ribbonwood and very large corfire trees as well, which I've never seen such big ones as what's in here. And then there is broadleaf and what else? A lancewood, and a very big lancewood as well. Again, you don't often see them that big.
Yeah.
And there is one of my favourites actually, which is marble leaf. I've been meaning to try and remember the Māori words for these. They're better than what I'm saying. But anyway, one of my goals is to put some plaques around the place with the Māori name as well, so then you can kind of start to learn them better. That's a wee few that you'll get to see as you're walking through.
What motivated you to set aside some bits of land and choosing those particular pieces?
Yeah, like I said earlier, this one was an easy choice because it is so accessible and easy to, and we can use it. And so we started with applying for a Kiwi2 covenant, and that paid 50% of the fencing cost, because that's the big cost of what you do is the fencing, and the bigger the area, of course, the more fencing involved. So it was awesome that they came to the party, so that it was only a 50% contribution, and they do take into consideration your labour as part of that 50%. So it really wasn't a big cost in that regard. So we're very appreciative of the Kiwi2 covenanted organisation. The second one we did the same thing. We applied for the Kiwi2 covenant. I guess the motivation is just that there isn't a lot of native bush on the peninsula, full stop. And what we had here, we thought, well, we got to protect that really, because it's a rare. It's improving. There is, because I work now in the field and I go into a lot of properties and do predator control work. It's improved greatly. Like there's more and more protective bush, and it's growing. But yeah, we just sort of thought, well, yeah, it's there to be protected, and you might as well. Like, from fencing it off and having it protected does not impact any of your livestock and numbers, or you know what I mean? Like, it doesn't impact that at all. So, and then like I say, when you get financial support to fence it off with the Kiwi2 covenant system, yeah, it's a no-brainer for us.
Oh, this is lovely. What is this that we're looking at right now?
The marble leaf.
Oh my God, it's huge.
Yeah, it's a big version, and that's what you haven't seen as much of the large marble leaf trees. I believe sometimes, like when they are really tall, I saw one actually recently, happened to be in Nelson. The leaves are so high sometimes that you don't realise it is what it is, whereas this one has actually fallen over. So
right.
If you come around here, you can see this whole tree has fallen. Okay. But it's still alive, which is good. I wondered how... Look, you can see.
Yeah.
The tree's fallen. And it could have been in those... We had really large winds plus a huge amount of rain and flooding. So whether that uplifted the tree, I'm not sure. But
parts of the roots are still obviously down there. Yes. So it's going to be okay, and we can enjoy the leaves in the meantime.
That's right. So I'm really pleased, because I keep expecting to come and see the leaves dying off, and it might have... But no, it's still alive because it's a beautiful tree, so that's good.
Okay, cool.
Ferns as well, I didn't mention. We've got ferns right through the bush as well.
Apart from taking the stalk off, the shape and everything, what other things did you do to help it regenerate?
Well, rabbits is a big problem here on the peninsula and on our farm, on this particular block. So we have done a lot of pindone carrot operations and shooting to control the rabbits, because they were browsing a lot more than we thought they were. Once we got rid of the rabbits, the regeneration improved a lot. Possums as well, so the Otago Peninsula is pretty much possum free now. My husband was one of the first trustees to start up that group to get rid of all the possums on the peninsula. So we don't have to worry about TB, and it also means that the regeneration of the bush, you just don't get the possums browsing, and I'm sure it's made a massive difference, as well as the amount of bird life we have in here now. Got lots of tuis and bowerbirds, etc., which you can probably hear. So
I do, yeah. It's a really pretty bit of bush that you have here. It's just gorgeous.
This is one of the large lancewoods.
Wow, that is amazing.
And it's sort of like entwined through the kānuka there. Natives like to be close to each other, and that's a really good example of that. But when the seeds are dropped and they grow, they do actually all intertwine with each other, and it can be quite close and just shade each other out, but just must all work it out.
And I guess down at there, the root system, everything's intertwining and adding some extra stability probably.
Yeah, I never thought of it like that, but that's probably very true, actually. So it is, I do love regenerative bush.
And when you covenanted this bit of land, when was that?
It was 2007.
Right, so it's quite a while ago, and this open glade where we are at the moment, that's got quite a lot of bracken. You're saying it was a bigger, wider area than this.
Yes, all the grass areas have become smaller, but it's because what happens is it creeps. Like, it's not like seedlings get dropped into long grass, because the grass actually does strangulate a new seedling or a new seed. But what happens is that the birds perch in the big tall trees and drop their seeds underneath the trees where the dirt is, and then you'll get these new ones growing, and then as they get bigger, another seedling drops, and then it actually crawls out, if you see what I mean.
Yes.
Yeah, so it slowly, but it's a very slow process.
Yes.
Because native trees are so slow in growing that it takes a while before they're big enough to shade out the grass, to create dirt, to create the next lot of seeds to come in. But we have noticed it, because it's now been 15, 16 years. You can see that that's happened, and that's the process of it happening. And also, without the grazing of the possums and the rabbits, it means that all the new seedlings that are coming underneath where the dirt is growing and doing their whole creeping out of regeneration is so much greater.
Right, yeah. And then the bracken here, I wonder if that helps speed up the process a little bit, because the grass is so dense, but the bracken is maybe a little bit, allows more space for seeds to drop down.
Yeah, hopefully. This bracken is a new thing. The native bush changes all the time. Weather dependent, I'd imagine. We just had a huge amount of rain and some flooding in areas. There's just a creek just there. Perhaps the water, the moisture came up, because bracken likes some moisture, and it's come away off that. I feel like even last time I was in here, I didn't remember seeing all this bracken. So
yeah.
Our weather lately has been a lot of rain and then a lot of sun. So the growth of everything is huge at the moment.
Right.
So consequently, I'm not surprised why bracken's just gone taking off.
It'll be interesting to see what this is like next year then with this bracken. And have you taken any photos?
We do take photos as part of the Kiwi2 covenanted obligation. The only obligation you have once you've fenced it off is you have a representative from their organisation meet with you once a year, and just for hour or so, maybe a couple of hours, and we go to photo point places and take the same photo every year, and so then you can see the changes. So yeah, we do that.
That's so useful. And then they've got that database too, haven't they?
They do have the database, so that they can look at the changes. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So have you, we've got fabulous regeneration here. Have you done any planting at all?
We have in some of the areas on that where the grass was quite a bit, and it just felt like it was going to take a long time to do that creeping in sort of regeneration that happens. It's, we're a bit impatient, I guess. So we have sort of planted in some of those areas, and there's a top corner, which is quite a big area. I think we've planted over 1,000 natives in that one, because the other thing that kind of stopped that regeneration around the outside of the bush is Muehlenbeckia, which sort of covers the bush and it stops that happening. It gets covered in, so then the birds aren't perching the same. The dirt underneath is not quite the same. It just seems to be not having the same impact.
That's interesting, yeah.
But yeah, so we have planted a little bit in here. I guess
but it is pretty wild looking. It's really magnificent, I must say. It is absolutely amazing. And we did pass by some trapinator boxes. Mm-hmm. So, but you said that you're maybe going to be taking those out?
Yes, that's we will definitely be taking them out probably in the next week or two, because we know there's no possums in here. We haven't had any evidence of the possum with cameras or scat dogs or signs on trees or anything for over a year now. So it's safe enough to take the possum traps out and just not have to look at a box, I guess, on a tree.
Which is such a success story for the Otago Peninsula.
Yes, yeah, it is. We have, you might have noticed, a white box with which is for some toxin for the rodents, for rats and mice. It's a very ratty area. All our possum traps would get ratted quite continually, so we were always doing a bit of work for the rats and the mice as well, which definitely helps with our smaller birds. We have got the Titi Punamu in here, the rifleman. So we know that if we actually make sure we're suppressing the rats and mice numbers to a low level, that has a big impact on their numbers.
Yeah. In addition to your 3 covenants, you're also doing a bit of, like you said, you've got some land that you lease, and you've got some cattle in there, and there's one part where it's next to the dockland. You were saying that you're getting a certain amount of regeneration even despite having cattle there.
Yeah, or more sheep, actually.
Oh, sheep,
so
sorry.
More sheep grazing, and at a low level. So, yes, it's surprising how much regeneration is still happening there with young kānukas. Well, kānuka is often one that can be grazed alongside stock. But also I noticed there are lancewoods and a few broadleaf seedlings and things like that can be eaten by stock. But I think it's just that we don't have a high stocking rate there. Just with the type of, it's very steep hill country anyway, so it's not an area where you would have a high stocking rate, so it means that regeneration can still happen, which is great. Yeah.
So that could be something maybe that people who are listening could experiment with, perhaps, if they are next to some existing bush.
Yeah, for sure, yeah. And then, have your higher stocking rates in areas where that doesn't impact the native bush, I guess. A little bit of cutting back here.
Okay, so we're on our way and we're going to look for some native supplejack that you find. And how did you discover it?
I discovered it because I was cutting back Muehlenbeckia just in certain areas in this bush. We cut it all back just to create a bit more openness for us to walk through. But also I noticed that once that happened, more light comes in and you get more regeneration and it just opens up the bush a whole lot better. So we did quite a bit of work on cutting all this Muehlenbeckia back. And then I started, without realising it, I was cutting supplejack, that I realised, I better not do that. So
But very similar vines.
Similar vine, and it's just some of it's just down there. But as we're walking to that, this big tree here is a hawthorn, which is a weed which I really dislike. I think it's one of the most disliked tree that I had that's introduced, and when because it's prickly and I don't know, I just don't feel like it belongs in this bush. And in certain areas, fine, but not in the native bush.
Is there any non-natives that you tolerate here as part of the ecosystem?
I don't mind elderflower, and I don't mind because the birds can enjoy it as well, and we can enjoy it, and it's it's kind of prettyish. I don't mind it.
Yeah.
And the other one is tree lucerne.
Yes, right.
The birds can benefit a lot from tree lucerne as well. And in actual fact, this bush has the really tall native trees so that the birds can enjoy that height factor. But I know in other areas, like around my house, where we've got a mix of natives and exotics all around our house, but we've also got big macrocarpa trees not too far away and gum trees, and there's other properties that I've noticed like it as well that have the big exotic gums, and so the native birds really like the height of those trees.
They really do.
So they're kind of, I've been sort of saying to people, just even if you're going to take out some, just keep a few, because all the natives we're planting, it's going to take so long for them to get to that height, and in the meantime we need these other big trees to serve as a purpose for that, the roosting in the high trees. I'm not completely against exotics that have a purpose at the moment. Even though I've actually taken out some hawthorn trees because I don't like them, but they have berries that the birds will eat, and same with the blackberry, will provide at times food for the birds. So although it's a painful pest plant that you haven't growing in your native bush, it can provide the food for the birds that the native bush, if it's not well established, hasn't got that food for the birds. And if we've taken out all the predators like the possums, and then we're doing some rodent work as well, then we're going to have an increase in birds that are going to need more food. So perhaps some of those pest plants we should reconsider not worrying about them as much until we get the bush more established. Yes,
so it's kind of like doing things incrementally rather than in a big blitz, perhaps.
Absolutely, yes. Because you don't want the pest plants taking over either. But if a few stay, it's not the end of the world. And that can make you feel a whole lot better when you're actually walking through your bush and seeing some pest plants going, actually, it can be a food for the birds right now, so if you're constantly worrying about the work that needs to be done with pest plants and that sort of thing, it can deter from the enjoyment. So, sometimes got to see a benefit. But at the same time, you can just quietly work away on suppression and making sure that they're not becoming rampant and spreading at the same time. So, one of the things we have done to manage the weeds, which was like creating the tracks, cutting back Muehlenbeckia and the hawthorns especially, and some of the blackberry, is we actually applied for a fund so that we could get some contractors in to do it. Because we're just so busy, and so you start, and what happens with the weed plants is you do some and then you get exhausted by it, or you get busy and you stop doing it, and then before you know it, a year goes by and then they're back to the same and you haven't got anywhere with it. So we applied for the Regional Council Eco Fund for contractors to come in and actually really blitz it, and they have a skill that we don't have, which is called drill and fill, where they drill into the tree and put a herbicide into the tree, and then it just naturally falls over like this one is, which essentially does the job of what a tree does when it falls down, and then you get the biodiversity benefits of a fallen tree, rather than cutting something out, creating a massive mess, trying to drag things away. So this whole drill and fill, I'm a huge fan of that. And so this is a tree, you can see the drills holes there. It's now falling though, and it's not really falling like we're going to have to clamber under it and hope it doesn't fall any further, but eventually I guess if it hits the ground we'll climb over it. I mean, it's not such a big tree that we can't climb over a fallen log, so should be alright.
It's feeling pretty sturdy though. We're alright.
Fine for a little bit longer. So here's the supplejack here.
So this is the supplejack.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, as I can see what you mean. It is very similar, but maybe slightly different feel to the bark.
Yeah, and it's got the little frongy things that you can actually eat at certain times. A friend of mine showed me that when I did the Rakiura track with her. The little shoots that come off the supplejack are really delicious. It tastes like sweet asparagus kind of flavour.
Okay.
It is definitely something to keep, and it's not as invasive as Muehlenbeckia, and so I'll try not to cut that.
You've kind of just snipped off, I guess, the Muehlenbeckia because it is a native and you don't want it to completely lose it, do you?
No, I mean, I guess it creates part of the bush of what it naturally is doing. And there's apparently, I mean, I don't know a huge amount of that, but I have heard that there is a lot of biological benefits with all sorts of things that live in it.
Insects
and all that sort of thing. So
that's right.
Yeah.
But in general, we're just getting this wonderful regeneration. So nature's doing its thing here, and you're giving it a bit of a hand.
Giving it a bit of a hand, yeah.
So apart from this, the supplejack, have you had any other interesting discoveries that you've found since the regeneration's happened? Anything surprising you?
I guess I do see, it is a bit... People have different opinions about the Muehlenbeckia and how much you should clear of it and things like that. And I think it has surprised me how when you do clear it, it does improve your bush a lot more than you think it would by letting in more light. So... yeah, I guess that was... I didn't know that was going to happen, I guess. I just thought we were clearing it to protect the trees that they were smothering.
Yes.
But it had more than that effect. It meant that we can release some of the trees they were smothering, but also it created a lot more...
You got a greater amount of undergrowth coming up
once we cleared the Muehlenbeckia.
Yeah. Mm. So if you were to give, some farmers some tips, what would you advise them in terms of, which bits of land, if they kind of want to give a bit back to nature, which bits of land to choose?
Definitely, if you've got any, old native bush that's there, it just makes so much sense rather than new plantings. I mean, or a bit of both, and that's the thing, we've done both. And then I guess, you can do the Q2 Covenant Fund, but there are other funds as well that are not too difficult to apply for. Like I said, we've used the Regional Council Eco Fund, and we've also used the Dunedin City Council Biodiversity Fund as well to fund some of these things that meant that we can get either more plantings in or contractors to help with the weed work.
Yeah, so there is that help. And so how do you feel, since, I guess you've seen the land change, how does it feel to have all of this bush grow up around you?
Yeah, it is neat. I don't know, I just love being in here. So any excuse to come in and bring someone in and share it with others is great.
I'm very grateful to Paula Cross for her time and for sharing Seaton's bush with me. It's a special place and it's really great that it's being cared for thanks to the Cross family. To recap some of Paula's great tips, firstly, the most suitable areas to fence off for rewilding are where there are existing native forest remnants as well as steep south-facing slopes. Covenants and grants are a great way to go with fencing and weeding costs. And where sheep stock numbers are grazing in sufficiently low numbers next to native bush, natural native forest regeneration can still happen. And although Paula is passionate about pest and weed control on these covenanted pieces of bush, one piece of advice that she gave me that I love is to not remove all of the non-native trees and shrubs that provide habitat and food for native birds until their functions are being filled by native plant species. And I think this approach fits in really well with the rewilding ethos, which is all about the importance of restoring ecosystem functioning and allowing nature to take the lead. So thank you for listening to Rewilding in Action. I'm Maureen Howard, and if you're listening to this as a podcast, it would be really great if you could subscribe. It helps so much to get it shared widely. In the next episode, I visit John and Moira Parker on their property to find out how they tackled the rabbits that were eating the understory of their regenerating native forest. What they had to do to reduce rabbit numbers was quite a feat, but they are now enjoying a flourishing ecosystem. So until next time, I leave you with the sounds of birdsong from Paula and Brendan Cross's property, who are letting nature take the lead.
This podcast was produced by OAR FM Dunedin with support from New Zealand On the Air.